So for the last 3 weeks, we've been focusing our attention on the glory of God. And truth be told, as I got into that series, and the more that I dug into that series, it just overwhelmed me. I just could not stop thinking about the glory of God, about how big a deal God's glory really is. And so, it was just on my mind all the time. God is big. He's a big deal. And so for just one more week, I want us to keep dealing with this word glory. And I want to use this today as kind of a hinge pin to transition. So we were in a series called To God Be the Glory. Today we're going to transition into a new series, Big Words, Big God. And what we're going to do is we're going to look at some big words. We're going to look at some big ideas, some big concepts that reveal how incomprehensibly big our God truly is. So let me ask you some questions to get started. Have you ever been in the presence of someone who's really big? I'm 6'3", I'm about 240, and generally speaking, I don't typically feel small around most people. But my best friend Bill Frazier, who came and spent some time with me this week, he's 6'5". He dresses out at about 350-ish. And when I stand next to Bill, suddenly I don't feel so big anymore. My kids will tell you that one of my all-time favorite movies in the whole world is the movie Princess Bride. And one of the key characters in that movie is a giant whose name is Fezzik, who's played by none other than Andre the Giant. Andre the Giant is 7 feet, 4 inches tall, weighs over 500 pounds. This guy is huge. He is big. Just to kind of give you some perspective of how big he is, that's a full-grown adult that he's fighting with there, and you can kind of see the height difference. But then I found another picture that really kind of said it for me. So that's Andre standing next to Arnold Schwarzenegger. You know, I always thought Arnold Schwarzenegger was a big dude until I saw him standing next to Andre the Giant, and now he looks a whole lot smaller than he used to me. What's the biggest thing that you've ever been in the presence of? Maybe the Grand Canyon? The Atlantic Ocean? I remember my very first backpacking trip with Bill and Dave and his brother Russ, and we had gone up to the Canadian Rockies in Jasper National Park. We flew into Canada, landed in a town called Edmonton, got in the car, we drove a few hours, had to stop for the night, and where we stopped at this hotel, off in the distance, you could see the mountains. And boy, I was getting excited. And I thought, well, man, this is going to be great. We're going to get an early start. We're going to get on the trailhead early. Now, we'd already driven several hours just to get to here. We get up the next morning. We get in the car. It's a couple of hours before you get into the mountains, right? They were spectacular. Their scale was overwhelming. They were really, really big. What's the biggest thing that you've ever been a part of? Maybe a moment, maybe a movement. You know, back when Billy Carroll was still alive, he used to take me to all the UK home basketball games. And if you've ever been to a UK game, you know that before they make their grand entrance, you know, the lights dim and the music comes on and they play this theatrical trailer that just very elegantly weaves UK's past and their present and their hopes for the future. And they do that to remind you that as a UK fan, you're part of something big. It's called the Big Blue Nation, right? You know, the fireworks would go off, the crowd would be screaming, the energy in the place was just incredible. People are drawn to big people. They're drawn to big things. They're drawn to big moments. But what is it inside us that draws us to those things? What are we searching for? For what do we yearn? In the Old Testament book of Exodus, we read about a big God doing some really big things. For 400 years, the Israelites have been enslaved to the Egyptians. When God finally rescues and delivers His people from that dreadful situation, He works through His servant Moses. God leads them on this journey to a beautiful land that He had promised to their forefathers, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. It was an arduous journey that proved difficult in many ways, mostly due to the fact that God's chosen people were just like us. And they were very disobedient on the way. Their most flagrant disobedience is found in Exodus 32. Moses is up on Mount Sinai. He's in the presence of God, and he is receiving the law of God. So if you've ever done one of those read the Bible through a year plans, read the Bible in a year, you know, you get through Genesis and it's really exciting. In Exodus you read about the Israelites leaving and moving to the Promised Land, but then you get into Leviticus, Numbers, and Deuteronomy, and it's like, oh boy. Right? You just get whammed with that because that's the law, right? And so if you've ever read through those, you know that God gave all of that to Moses when he was on the mountain. So this was not a 10-minute conversation. Moses is actually up on the mountain for 40 days. That's over a month. And while he's up there, the Israelites, they become impatient. They begin to start thinking, well, what's happened to him? He's been killed. He's not coming back. Where is he? And so they decide to fabricate for themselves an idol made from gold, a golden calf, and then they proceeded to bow down and worship it. Now, when we look at that situation today, we think, you know what, that is so primitive. I mean, preacher, you said that we're a lot like that. We would never do that. We would never worship a created thing over the Creator Himself who's done so much for us, would we? Or would we? If we're honest, we do the same thing all the time. Whether it's a big fancy house, or the fancy nicest new car, or the latest and greatest iPhone, whenever a created thing draws our attention and our affection more towards it than towards our Creator, that is idolatry. And I'm confident that we're all guilty of that. I can say for a fact, I know that I am guilty of that. Well, God sees this great sin of His people, and so He sends Moses back down to deal with these folks. And as Moses approaches the camp, he sees the equivalent of a raid going on, and Moses just loses his cool, right? He just explodes. Subsequently, there's a whole bunch of stuff that happens. I'm not going to go into a lot of detail here. Suffice it to say that at this point now, God is not going to play second fiddle. God doesn't sit in the second chair. And so He basically tells Moses, look, Moses, it is obvious these people don't want me with them. So I'm going to honor my promise. I'm going to let you all go into the Promised Land. I'm going to send you on, but I'm going to send you on without me. You all go on ahead. I'm not going with you. I will, however, send an angel ahead of you. Now, that's not a small promise, okay? That's still a really big deal. You see, despite what we see in the Hallmark stores, angels are not these fat little white babies with harps and bumblebee wings and just kind of wafting around from cloud to cloud. In the Scriptures, every time you see an angel described in the Bible, they are mighty. They are fearsome. They are powerful warriors who inspire absolute terror and fear to those who encounter them. Go back and look. Every time you see an angel appear in Scripture, what are the first words out of the angel's mouths? Almost every time. Fear not. Do not be afraid. So God is not leaving the Israelites high and dry here. Angels are big. In fact, you remember the final plague? As God is preparing the Egyptians to let them go, what was the final plague? It was the angel of death. One angel takes out the firstborn male child of everyone in the land and the animals as well. They are dreadful creatures. Now, something that's always fascinated me about Moses, as you get into his story and you look at his relationship, Moses had a very unique relationship with God. It was different. It was special. It was very, very unique. And outside the camp, Moses had a special tent that he would go to. It was a special tent. It was pitched specifically for the purpose of meeting with God. And so it was called the tent of meeting. And anytime that anyone had a question or needed to inquire of God, hey, God, what are we going to do about this? Or what should I do about that? They'd come and they'd tell Moses. And then Moses would go out to that tent and Moses would meet with God. It was a pretty incredible scene. Let me paint the picture here for you. Exodus 33, if you want to turn your Bibles there, and I'll put it up on the wall here for you as well. Starting in verse 8. And whenever Moses went out to the tent, all the people rose and stood at the entrances to their tents, watching Moses until he entered the tent. As Moses went into the tent, the pillar of the cloud would come down and stay at the entrance while the Lord spoke with Moses. Whenever the people saw the pillar of cloud standing at the entrance to the tent, they all stood and worshiped, each at the entrance to their tent. The Lord would speak to Moses face to face as one speaks to a friend. I don't know about you, but that's the kind of relationship that I want with God. That's the kind of intimacy that I desire with our Heavenly Father. The intimacy, the trust, the openness between the two of them, I yearn for that in my own life. Well, beginning in verse 12, Moses is actually going to circle back around to this conversation that he was having with God when God said, hey, look, I'm going to send you all into the promised land, but I'm not going with you, because if I hang around with these people for very long, they are a stubborn and stick-necked people, and if I hang around with them, I'm going to kill them all. I'm going to take them all out, and so you all just go on ahead of me. Verse 12, one day Moses said to the Lord, you've been telling me, take these people up to the promised land. But you haven't told me whom you will send with me. You've told me, I know you by name, and I will look favorably on you. If it's true that you look favorably on me, let me know your ways, so I may understand you more fully and continue to enjoy your favor. And remember that this nation is your very own people. You got to love the candidness of this conversation. Moses prays a lot like we do sometimes. You know, when things just aren't trending kind of like the way we'd like them to. And so Moses is just like, hey God, we need to talk about the plan. Like, I need a little more information about the plan. What exactly is the plan here? What are your intentions? And we get the sense here that Moses is not okay with an angel going instead of God going. In other words, this warrior angel, he's not big enough or substantial enough for Moses to lead these people into the promised land. So look at how this plays out. Verse 14. The Lord replied, my presence will go with you, and I will give you rest. Now that word presence there, it's an interesting word. In the Hebrew language, it means face. And so literally God is saying, my face will go with you. So to kind of paint the picture of what that means, think about it like this. You ever watch the Olympics, Summer Olympics? You ever watch the races, the sprinters? Watch the sprinters carefully. They never look behind them. Their face is always forward. They do not look behind. They're running towards the finish line. And the reason is this. Where your face is aimed, your strength follows. So God, in essence, here is saying, look, my strength will go forward with you all the way to the end of the journey. And that's really good news for Moses. That's good news for the children of Israel. So this is how Moses responds. Verse 15. Moses said to him, if your presence does not go with us, do not send us up from here. How will anyone know that you're pleased with me and with your people unless you go with us? What else will distinguish me and your people from all the other people on the face of the earth? Moses tells God, look, if you're not going, we're not going. That's the bottom line. It doesn't get any easier than that. He doesn't even talk about the angel that God promised. He just simply states that if God doesn't go, we're not budging. And here's why that's so important. This is the key point that I want you to take away with you this morning. It's this. Moses was completely and utterly unsatisfied with anything less than the very presence of God Himself. Unsatisfied with anything less than the very presence of God Himself. And that, my friends, is the proper way for you and I to live. To be in this constant state of dissatisfaction in the face of any other thing than the living God. You see, folks, what Moses understands, and the thing that you and I need to understand, is that the only thing that distinguishes us from anybody else on the face of the planet is the fact that God is with us. And if God is not with us, then there's nothing special about us. So we need to ask a very important question then. What is there that is distinguishing about me? What is there that is distinguishing about you that makes you different from anyone and everyone else in the world? In a world where everyone's trying to build their own brand, they're trying to establish their own platform, they want to become influencers of other people, let me ask you a question. Is the presence of God a distinguisher in your life? Do the people you work with, do the people you go to school with, does your family, do they know, can they see, can they tell that there is something different about you? And that difference is the presence of a holy God in your life. You know, rather than trying to make a name for himself, Moses kept the perspective that he was nothing more than a fugitive. He was nothing more than a forgotten, stuttering shepherd, but God. But God intervened in his life, and everything that had been accomplished along the way was accomplished not by Moses, it was accomplished by God. Moses never got caught up believing that he was a big deal because he always kept a proper perspective of just what a big deal God is. Well, let's keep going. Verse 17. And the Lord said to Moses, I will do the very thing you have asked, because I am pleased with you, and I know you by name. That's a significant statement being made right there. I know you by name. It's a relational portrait that is being painted there of an intimate relationship between the two of them. Earlier in the chapter, we saw that this relationship was described as a face-to-face relationship, kind of like two neighbors who are standing and talking to one another. And yet what we're about to see is that while God sees all of Moses, Moses is not yet seeing all of God. In other words, if you were to describe the presence of God as an ocean, the ocean of God's presence, Moses recognizes here, he's barely got his toes in the water. He's just barely dipping in, and Moses wants more. And so he says in verse 18, he says, please show me, and here's our big word, glory. Please show me your glory. And even though it's only 5 letters, the word glory is one of the biggest words in the Bible. That's why we just spent the last 3 weeks talking about it. Glory, it's the word doxa in the Greek. I didn't tell you about what it is in the Hebrew. It's the word kabod. Kabod. And it simply translates as heavy. So what's Moses asking for here? So let me illustrate it like this. A few minutes ago, I told you my height, 6'3", told you what I weighed, 240 pounds. I have a granddaughter. I love her to death. She stands about this tall. She's 3'1". She weighs all of 28 pounds soaking wet in her clothes. Right? Well, every now and then, I'll be in the living room, sitting on the couch. I'll get up for something, and Piper will see me get up, and she'll run over, and she'll get on the couch, and she'll say, Bampa, I'm in your seat, which translated means, Bampa, come sit on me, right? And so I go over there, right, and she wants me to come and sit on her, right? Well, she'll do the same. She'll come and she'll run and she'll jump on me, and she just jumps and she'll land on me with the full force of her weight, all the weight that she has to bear, which is a whole 28 pounds, right? You barely feel it, but she's given it all she's got. But when I sit on her, as her Bampa, I have to exercise restraint. So I have to let her feel just enough of my weight so that she feels it, but not so much of my weight that it crushes her. Moses is asking the God of the universe to throw off all restraint. And I'm not even sure he realizes what he's asking here. But he's basically saying, God, crush me. Let me feel the full weight of your glory. Some 480 years later, another young shepherd who'd spent many nights under the stars wrote a song. It went like this: the heavens proclaim the glory of God. The skies display His craftsmanship. Day after day they continue to speak. Night after night they make Him known. They speak without a sound or word. Their voice is never heard, yet their message has gone throughout the earth, and their words to all the world. God has made a home in the heavens for the Son. King David wrote that psalm. And I want you to notice that he says the heavens proclaim the glory of God. Not that they are the actual glory of God, and that's an important distinction that we have to make. They proclaim it, but they are not the glory. You know, when you and I, we look up at the sun, the moon, the stars, what we're seeing there is a message that is written in the sky that's basically telling us, look, you think that's impressive? You think all of this is really big? Just imagine, how big is the one who put it there? How big is the one who created it, who made it, who hung all of them in the sky? When Moses says, show me your glory, he's not saying, hey God, show me something that points to your glory. He's not saying, show me something that symbolizes your glory. He's saying, God, show me who you really are. Show me everything. I want to see all of it. I don't want to just dip my toes in the water. I want to be immersed in your presence. Moses is asking the God who is so big, so heavy, so substantial that Mount Everest, the Grand Canyon, and the Pacific Ocean are his playthings. He's asking that God to bring his full weight to bear on him. Have you ever wondered why? I mean, Moses has experienced some really big things in his life. He's seen a burning bush that didn't burn up. He's watched the Nile get turned to blood. He's watched the Red Sea as God parted. He's carried tablets of stone inscribed by the very finger of God. He's followed a pillar of cloud by day, a pillar of fire by night. He has experienced some big, big things, and yet he's still not satisfied. And to be completely honest, neither am I. And I'm sure neither are you. You know, I've stood on mountaintops. I've swam in the ocean. I've seen elephants and hippos and zebras and giraffes in their natural element. I've flown on airplanes. I've witnessed spectacular sunrises and sunsets. I've stood underneath a tree that was here when Christ walked the earth. Even still, I am not satisfied. And neither are you. Why? Why do even the most amazing experiences lose their awe? Why do you and I still want more? C.S. Lewis said it very well in his book, Mere Christianity. He says, if I find in myself a desire which no experience in this world can satisfy, the most probable explanation is that I was made for another world. I really like that. And Moses is in the presence of the one from another world. And so this is his opportunity to experience everything his heart has longed for and desired. Well, let's see how God responds. Verse 19, the Lord replied, I will make all my goodness pass before you. I will call out my name, Yahweh, before you. For I will show mercy to anyone I choose. I'll show compassion to anyone I choose. But you may not look directly at my face. For no one may see me and live. Now you read that, and at first glance, it can sound a little confusing, right? Because, wait a minute, preacher, I thought you just said that Moses had a unique relationship with God, and in fact, we described it as this kind of a face-to-face relationship, but now God's saying, look, Moses, you can't see my face. Moses wants to see all of God, but God's like, no, Moses, you don't understand. You can't handle it. It's kind of like this. I love ice cream. I've always loved ice cream. My oldest daughter inherited that from me as well. She loves ice cream. Well, last year we were at the beach. Cheryl, Bill, and Missy and I. We had gone out to dinner, and we'd had a very large dinner. And but I still had that, I need an ice cream craving, right? And so there was a little ice cream shop that was up the road, and so I was like, hey, let's get some ice cream. They're like, no, we don't need an ice cream. And I'm like, well, you might not need ice cream. I need ice cream. So we're going to stop and we're going to get some ice cream, right? So we pull in this little shop. I'd been there the night before as well. I might have been there every night that week. It remains to be calculated and seen for sure. But they didn't want anything. And so I thought, okay, no problem. I'll whip in here. I'll run in. I'll grab an ice cream. I'll get out and we'll be on our way. And that'll be that, right? Well, I get inside and there's another couple standing up there. Now, this is one of those kind of older-fashioned type ice cream spots, not where you pull the handles and everything just comes gushing out. But this was like, you've got these big tubs of ice cream, and there's 26 of them in there. And so you got to kind of look up and down. And then, they got to scoop it out. And it's hard to scoop and all this. Well, so this couple is in front of me. Of course, I'm in a hurry. Everybody's in the car waiting on me, right? So I'm like, okay, just be patient, which I'm not very good at, right? And so they're looking, and they're like, oh, well, could I taste that one? The lady, those little tiny spoons they give you? She scoops out, and they're like, and then they scoop another flavor over here, and I'm thinking, oh my goodness, would you just make a decision? And so, they tried, I don't know how many of them, but more than my patience stood for. But then they finally say, okay, well, why don't you give us some of this? It wasn't even what they tasted. Why are you wasting my time here? If you already knew what you were going to get, you didn't need to try the rest of those, right? But they had to taste. Here's the point. God is giving Moses a taste because God knows, look, Moses, you can't handle the whole tub. I can't give you the whole jug here. You asked to see my glory, but Moses, it would crush you. So I'm just going to give you a taste. Psalm 34 says, taste and see that the Lord is good. I'm going to let you experience my goodness, Moses, but there is no way that you're going to be able to handle the full weight of my glory. And so God lets Moses taste one of his attributes, one of his flavors, so to speak, but certainly not the sum and substance and weight of his glory, as that would absolutely destroy Moses. He wouldn't be able to stand it. Let's keep going, verse 21. The Lord continued, look, stand near me on this rock. As my glorious presence passes by, I will hide you in the crevice of the rock. I'll cover you with my hand until I pass by. Then I will remove my hand and let you see me from behind. But my face you will not see. My face will not be seen. And I can't even begin to describe for you what that moment must have been like. I have no idea. I know that I've experienced the overwhelming nature of God's creation. I know that I've been in the presence of some people who are pretty substantial. I have felt the weight of being near something much bigger than myself, being part of something that's far bigger than I am. I've had those spine-tingling, humbling moments when I realized just how small I am. But this moment for Moses, nothing compares. I don't even know how to begin. And so there's no wonder that we read in chapter 34, verse 8, Moses immediately threw himself to the ground and worshiped. That, my friends, is the correct response in the presence of glory. In fact, it's the only response. And you could say it's even an involuntary response in the presence of such greatness. It's literally the only choice that we have. When we witness greatness, we stand, we applaud, we fall in silence, but we have to respond. There's something within us that has to respond to how great whatever it is that we just experienced is. I can give you an example of that. It's like that moment in a basketball game. You're 1 point behind, and there's 10 seconds on the clock, and they're bringing the ball up the floor. And the crowd is cheering and everybody's excited. And the basketball player, he's got the ball and they make the pass and the clock is clicking down. And then finally the shot goes up. Watch. Did you hear it? They're excited and the shot goes up and what happens? The hush, the anticipation, the hope, the wonder. What's going to happen? And when the shot goes in, what happens? They leap to their feet. They're screaming. They're shouting. Now, do you think that they sat there and calculated and say, okay, now if he makes this, I'm going to cheer. But if he doesn't make this, I'm not going to cheer. Nobody's thinking about that. It's inside of you, and when it happens, it's just got to come out, and it comes out in a big, magnanimous way. First the hush, then the celebration. When the shot goes in, you scream, you shout, you jump. So there are times in our lives where we feel like we're in that moment right before the shot goes in. Like something's going on in my life and I'm in the hush because I don't know. I don't know what's going to happen. I don't know how it's going to all turn out. Well, folks, let me tell you how it's all going to turn out because I know how it ends. You want to know how it ends? God wins. God hits the shot. He called the shot. He hit the shot. We have seen His glory in the face of His one and only Son, Jesus Christ. John says we've beheld His glory, the glory of the one and only Son who came from the Father, full of grace and truth. Paul said in Colossians chapter 1, and this is the secret, Christ lives in you. This gives you the assurance of sharing in His glory. Do y'all realize how significant that is? Do you truly understand how unbelievable it is that God's one and only Son would come for you? He would come for me. Do you comprehend the earth-shattering reality that the one who carved out the Grand Canyon with his pinky finger knows every one of you by name? Everything your heart has ever longed for, everything your heart has ever wished for, everything you've ever desired is found in Jesus. When the memory of all the other glories fade, His glory will remain. When the echoes of our past celebrations can no longer be heard in our ears, when the spine-tingling, awe-inspiring moments of earth have faded into the background, no matter how glorious the things we've experienced, past and present, are, do not forget that far greater things await us. You see, one day, you and I will see, and you and I will feel, and you and I will experience the full weight of His glory. And when that day comes, mark it down, we will worship. And it won't be optional. It will be the natural result of what we've just witnessed. C.S. Lewis, again, says it so well. He says, we do not merely want to see God's beauty. We want something else which can hardly be put into words. To be united with the beauty we see, to pass into it, to receive it into ourselves, to bathe in it, to become part of it. At present, we're on the wrong side of the door. But all the leaves of the New Testament are rustling with the rumor that it shall not always be so. Someday, we shall get in. Someday, we shall get in. Listen, church, you and I were created for more. And so we must never settle for anything less than that for which we've been created. We must never attempt to get from anyone or anything what we can only get from God. You and I were created to see and to feel and to experience God's glory. You and I were created to be in relationship with the biggest person in the universe, to witness the biggest accomplishments in the universe, and to be part of the biggest movement in the universe. The Church of Jesus Christ, we were created to worship Him. Stand up with me if you would. Let's all stand. I don't know if it's this way with you, but there are times in my life where something happens and it just comes out. That you don't know why, you can't explain it. Something inside of you just has to express what you're feeling, what's overcoming you at the moment. And so in this series, every week, we're going to end with a song. And it's going to be a different song. And today the song that we're going to sing is one of those songs that just there are times where things are going on and it just comes out. And if you're here this morning and you realize, you know what, the glory of God, the presence of God, I want the presence of God in my life, then as we're singing this song, as we're raising our hands and lifting our voices to the King of Kings and the Lord of Lords, if you'd like to make a decision, if you'd like to be a Christian, if you'd like to give your life to Jesus Christ, why don't you come right down here front and join me up front. But if you are confident in your salvation, if you are confident in your faith in Jesus Christ, if you trust the one that can give us that eternity, then I implore you, take a moment, close your eyes, I think you'll know the words, and worship in the presence of God. Let's